meeting for November 23rd, 2021 for Littleton Conservation Commission, and we are joined by Zoom. So we'll go ahead and get started. We historically would approve minutes. They are not available at this time, so we will postpone that to the next meeting, which will be on December the 14th.
Yep.
So administrative discussion, abutter legal, we talked abutter and legal notice re-notification. We had some discussion about this on the last meeting and asked the commission members to think about timing and such. And I think, Amy, you were going to look into if perhaps if other towns have any such re-notification plans, or what the commissioner's other thoughts were as well.
Yeah, I hadn't come across any other towns that had something specifically spelled out. And I was going to get in contact with town council. And as you'll hear for the next 4 bullet points, I did not get to any of these.
Okay. So do you need any other guidance from us, however, because I feel as though there was a good consensus at the last meeting where I think we were looking at perhaps 6 and 6. Or
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
I think you guys are off the hook.
Yep.
I'm back on.
And just for people that might be listening, 6 means 6 months, and then 6 consecutive or 6 meetings, and so that would be the equivalent of 3. Well, historically 3 months as well. Okay. So with that in mind, do we need to have discussion on invasive species management planning at all?
No update on that. SVT actually asked, we're going to sit down and try to do a priority. And I said, gee, wouldn't it be nice to have a map to do a priority thing on? And SVT, the AmeriCorps person, said that they had done something like that for Framingham with 9 categories overlaid, and said, can I do that for Littleton? I said, sure. We've been trying to kind of pull together a map like that for years, so it's being handed to us. So it's not the end of what we're going to want to do for prioritization in general.
And so those parcels, will that be inclusive of trust and conservation, and how expansive can we be on that invasive planning?
I believe the map they are going to give us is just townwide. Okay. So it's just an overlay on everything, and then we'd have to figure out which ones are parcels. And I, if there's an early detection species of concern, and if it's on trust property or town property, I think it probably gets equal weight. Or if we know something on private property, we wouldn't spend money on it, but we can certainly work with the landowners as we get moving. So. Okay.
Awesome. Welcome, Chase. Okay. Mass Trail grant round.
I've kind of given up on the ADA trail just because I think that grant is going to be a really heavy lift. And I also think I'm assuming would far exceed the $50,000. So I'm trying to get a couple contractors out to look at the boardwalk on Her Gay, which I think would have to probably be on helical piers. It's a fairly substantial crossing. And they just haven't gotten back to me yet. So see how it goes. But the main question on that is, where would we put the parking lot? On Balsam, near the mailboxes, if that means anything to you guys, or out on Foster, which means cutting down trees. So.
Okay. Andrew, I know you had some good comments on the last time we had discussion on the grant rounds and some of those 4 options. Any other thoughts or feedback?
I really think the boardwalk project would probably be the best. Like I had said last time, I do like the idea of an ADA trail at Long Lake Park and Colonial Drive at that entrance, but I think, like Amy said, it's just so many logistics to get something like that going. So if we were to pursue something, the boardwalks would be probably the most doable. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some enthusiasm, obviously, for the ADA trail. As I thought about it, so maybe something stuck at the end of Colonial Drive may not be the best place to put an ADA trail. You can only get to it by driving. And I was talking to Ed Mullen about it, and I said, Ed, because he knows I'm not gonna remember her name, who lives right there, who had the wetland fill and the restoration and all that stuff talk to her, because she's the one who's gonna be next to an expanded parking lot. And, let's just start lining stuff up and see if we either have a different location as a possibility, or, move ahead, but we can get our ducks in a row, I think, a lot easier. And especially since there's really no one, there's not no one running the show at Highway, but Chris is mostly out. There's not someone new. So, and we would be relying on them to do some of the in-kind services.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
Can I jump in? Oh,
Yep.
sorry. With respect to the ADA trail there, are there other locations, thinking longer term? I love the idea of a genuinely ADA accessible trail. If we didn't do it there, where else might we do it? And what are the stakeholders that are associated with other locations?
I had talked with the rec department and Elder and Human Services, and they're very enthusiastic about the whole idea. Alicia mentioned the trail that goes from basically Town Hall over to, is that Conant Park? That would either need a big boardwalk or maybe some wetland fill. So I backed off of that. It'd be a great location probably, but I kind of backed off of it. You also, I'm not sure how you can get from the trail up to Town Hall. That's a pretty steep hill. And the other place we had talked about it was Cloverdale, because that boardwalk is all ADA.
Right, and at that point, we would just need to provide access down to the boardwalk. That's
exactly. It's
Okay.
a little steep, so it would probably have to wind around, but that's the other possibility.
Okay. Is
And
this
obviously
something?
the loop is not ADA, but we can get people out on the boardwalk and probably make a sitting viewing area somewhere out there.
Is this something I could bring up with the Conservation Trust at some point, just to talk about and start to gather input on, if it's not going to be at Colonial? I just love the idea of ADA, a genuinely ADA accessible trail.
And I think Rick and I have been talking about this since I started working here.
Okay.
Actually. So it's always there. It's just, getting the money and everything pulled together is going to take some bit.
Okay.
And I did talk to, or traded mails with Kathy Stevens about having kind of a sit down, with those guys, especially on the land stewardship type stuff, to figure out how that's going to work going forward.
Hey, Amy, what about, is there any possibility of a trail to the already constructed lookout near Oak Hill? The one that you were mentioning that the Eagle Scout built.
Oh, Newtown Hill?
Oh, Newtown Hill, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, that would have to go all the way through the hayfield.
Yeah, you'd have to go through the hayfield, right?
And it's a decent slope down. So that would be a pretty big.
Yeah, even once you get to the woods, it's a slope down to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I like, because you could see a lot over there, Anna, but I think that terrain, I think over at Cloverdale, if we did a switchback and made it maybe a little bit wider, that might be a little easier.
Because it'd be nice to be able to get out in the marsh, which will all be Phragmites in 10 years anyway. So.
Oh, no.
I think Cloverdale personally would be a really good location if we can widen some of those boardwalks.
Oh, no, we would not widen the boardwalks. The
Then are
boardwalks
they-
themselves, they are ADA.
Is it
They'll have
ADA?
They are
wide
ADA.
enough?
Can I suggest a future agenda item to move this conversation along? Perhaps a joint conversation for 10 or 15 minutes with the Disability Commission, the Conservation Trust, and maybe Elder and Human Services, so we can collectively think about this with not just us on the line, but a variety of stakeholders about thinking about this in the long term, how we might accomplish that. And I'd be happy to organize that discussion.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and Chase, what you may want to do is even just take a couple commissioners or whomever, we can use that as a task force, and just go out and just refresh what everyone's seeing and thinking on the ground, and just take some measurements so we can kind of look at how viable that area is. Just so much work. So that way you can bring that to the other committees.
Right. With some practical, here's
Yeah.
what we would do kind of thing. I agree.
Yeah. And I'd also say, Alicia said there are certainly also grants out there to help with things like exercise stations or something along the lines that go with the ADA. Mass Trail, you get points if it's of regional use. So if there's any way, and that's where I was mostly thinking of the size of a parking lot, so that people from surrounding towns can come in also.
I know that at 300 King Street, Park and Rec had looked into putting some kind of ADA accessible trail with maybe even like little fitness courses along it a few years ago. So maybe that's something worth looking into again, because I mean, they have something similar at Grassy Pond in Westford. It's not ADA accessible, but it's kind of neat. You walk around and they've got like a little monkey bar and pull-up bar and
yeah. So that's starting to get out of my wheelhouse, because I was looking at the ADA to get folks either to, out to Long Lake or into a marsh or something, versus the more rec side of things. So there's going to be a swing of those things, but.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine having it be pretty educational would be a good slant instead of, or maybe exercise, but a lot of education, readily, like low enough for a wheelchair situated person to see. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. That's exciting. Okay. Look forward to that. Let's see. Anything on webpage updates? Anything that we can help you with? I know Anna had contributed quite a bit in terms of suggestions. If there's anything you want to ask us to help with.
I started looking at it one day next week, and then I said last week, I said, nope.
Yeah.
So.
I think honestly, as long as it's current, there's so many other things coming your way and other way. I think the commissioners would agree that it can be tabled for.
Yeah, it's not wildly current. It references some fairly old projects. So especially a lot of the open space should be updated, but
okay.
I'm hoping for a quiet winter. How's that sound?
Okay. Is there a possibility that either a scout or an intern could maybe take that on, help you out a little bit with that? Do you have an intern program?
Yeah, I don't think they'd be able to do the writing. They could have done the initial setup of the web page, but it's going to be twice as fast for me to write it as it would be for me to explain it to somebody to write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One item, if I may, that I forgot to add to the agenda, if it's permissible, is that if there's any update from the selectmen, Amy, that you'd like to share on getting you an associate for some hours.
It is working its way into the budget.
Okay. So if we can add that as a discussion item for the next meeting, just kind of keep us abreast of that. That would be appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay. It is 7:44. Did anyone else have any other items that they would like to add to the discussion? If not,
Sure.
I'd like to go ahead and open the. Amy, are you good? Anything else to add?
If we need filler, I got some stuff I can alert you to, but there's nothing urgent.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and open the 7:45, which is 242 King Street. And who is here to speak on that? Maggie?
And I will say the agenda is wrong. It should be 242 King Street, not 410 Great Road. That's for actually the next time. So what I would suggest is I think you can go, all the public notice was done, the abutters were notified. I think you can have this meeting, but would probably need to just repeat stuff on the 14th just to be safe.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Welcome. If you'd like to kind of address and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. My name is Kara Johnston with CDM Smith, and we are working with the Littleton Water Department on the design of the water resource recovery facility, as well as their sewer expansion. I see Corey Godfrey from the Water Department is on the line, and Maggie Lofstead from our office is also on the line. So Maggie will be walking us through the details. We are here tonight with our ANRAD request. The project is in the design phase as it currently stands. The ANRAD is for request for the 242 King Street address, as Amy just mentioned, which is the proposed location for the new wastewater treatment facility. So the design schedule is anticipated to be complete towards early summer period. So we are now starting the permitting phase, hence our meeting with you tonight. So we wanted to get confirmation of delineations with you as we work through the site plan in order to best locate all of the different components of the facility on the site. So we did walk the site with Amy back maybe 2 weeks ago now, and walk through the boundaries. So we can certainly talk through that. And Maggie, I can share my screen if that helps, and you could walk us through the application.
Sure. So yeah, we put together a little PowerPoint just to walk you through the NRAD. So we delineated one bordering vegetated wetland associated with Beaver Brook. And then we also, on the site, there's also an existing stormwater basin that we'll talk a little bit about at the end of the presentation. So 242 King Street, are you familiar with the location? I didn't actually put a location map on here, but it borders the King Street to the south, 495 to the west, and then the Beaver Brook wetlands to the west. It's a 9-acre parcel that was recently purchased by the Water Department. It has a former residence, and it's a former agricultural field, probably some time back. If you want to go to the next slide. So here's the site plan, and as you can see, the green is the bordering vegetated wetland that was flagged, and it's mainly an emergent marsh. It has a little bit of a wooded wetland border, and then on the site there's also a bordering land subject to flooding at elevation 211 based on the FEMA flood insurance maps. And then there's a 200-foot riverfront area, and we flagged the annual mean annual high water. Those are that line in the black to the right. And as you can see, you want to go to the next one. There's a stormwater basin on the site. It's at the sort of southwestern corner, and there are a 36-inch and a 12-inch stormwater outfall that discharges into the basin, and it collects stormwater from King Street and some stormwater from 495, and mainly the ramps. And we included some documentation from 1962 that we have secured or got our hands on from the former property owner that shows that the stormwater basin was actually created, and it's a man-made structure. There were some unknowns whether there were an actual stormwater outlet that connects the basin to the larger BVW, and the water department went out there. There's actually a blocked pipe, so they did some minor excavation. Got some permission from Amy to go out there, and they did discover that there's a small diameter pipe that conveys the stormwater into the larger BVW to the west. I think that's all I had.
Could you tell me location wise where this is? I'm having trouble. Like if I'm driving towards 495 on King Street.
It would be the last parcel right before you get to 495.
This is the bridge crossing right here. So 495 is running in this direction.
And you can see the ramps on the south.
Who is the former owner?
That's Mark Moderani.
Okay, yeah, I know the property.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need to
Yeah.
know. Yep. That's all I need to know. Thank you. Okay, cool. At least I know what we're talking about now.
So I had one question. You said that there was a BVW to the west, but it's not shown on the map. Can you?
I'm sorry, east. I'm sorry.
Oh, east.
I got my directions mixed up.
Oh,
The
okay.
BVW is the green line.
Oh, okay. So can you show us where that pipe ends up in the BVW?
Well, the location is of that small diameter culvert is approximately shown on this plan, but it comes out near flag 1-25.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So there used to be historically a lot of beaver activity further down. Is there still evidence of that?
I did not see that when I was on the site.
Okay. That's good news. So can you walk us through the process of what will happen with existing structures going forward?
Sure. So
Karen?
all
Okay, great.
So all of this is still in the preliminary design stage. So at this point, we're trying to identify the best location for the treatment facility on the site based on the delineation that we're discussing tonight. So at this point, we're trying to locate it, as far away from BVW as we can, thinking more towards the back of the site. What's still being determined is the access road in order to get back there. So the exact location of that access road would be determined based on the delineation decision. And at this point, the water department intends to keep the existing home intact, along with the existing, I think it's a shed or pool house on the east side of the site, and the barn is still being discussed within the water department based on the location of the access road, if they would be maintaining that or not. A decision has not been reached.
Kara, is the intention to retain the stormwater basin in its current configuration, or are you contemplating changing the storage capacity to a different location?
Good question. So we would definitely want to maintain the stormwater basin and perhaps utilize it for additional runoff from the site.
Okay. So if it's going to be utilized for additional runoff for the site, are you, and I understand we're sort of getting multiple steps ahead here. Are we contemplating expanding the size of that stormwater basin to accommodate additional runoff?
We would need to do all of the full drainage calculations to determine that.
Yeah, I thought that might be it.
So right now, you're saying that that stormwater basin was built for this current development, the existing house and barn and the driveway or whatever this is?
No,
Maggie,
no.
do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, no, the basin was as part of the 495 construction. It takes some of the roadway and highway runoff. It's not associated with the barn or the resident at all.
I see.
So I think what happens back when they built 495 is based on the documentation, and some of it I've included in the NRAD, is that some of his land was taken by eminent domain. And then there was perhaps an encroachment a little bit further into his land. So
may I ask it, and this may be an obvious question, but who is responsible for maintenance of it then?
That's a good question. We did reach out to Mass DOT and they did not claim that they maintain that basin at this point.
When was is there knowledge of the last time it was evaluated or cleaned, or if it's vastly overgrown?
No, we're not aware of that. Corey, I'm not sure if that came up in your discussions at all with the previous owner, but we're not aware of any recent cleanings or assessments.
Yeah, no, I'm not aware of anything like that. We just know that Mass DOT put it in back in the mid 60s. And then, as they so often do, probably neglected to maintain it over the ensuing decades.
Corey,
Do you know
think
if
it's, do you
oh,
think
sorry.
it's working, or at what capacity it's being efficient?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
it doesn't appear that it's been maintained recently. And then, as I think Maggie mentioned, the stormwater outfall from that basin was entirely clogged for who knows how long. So it certainly wasn't functioning as intended for some period of time here.
Are the pipes to the southwest that I presume drain to the basin in functional condition? The 12-inch and 36-inch pipes that are indicated there.
Yeah, I
It
took
looks that
a
way to me, anyway. I mean, I walked up there and it definitely, I mean, the basin is sized, I mean, it seems like it's a fairly well-functioning basin, other than the outlet pipe being clogged.
yeah,
It
certainly.
is pretty much dominated by Phragmites.
Yeah. Certainly receives flow from both of those pipes, the 12-inch and the 36-inch. It's directed right into the basin there. Those are functional.
Do I read this topography right, Corey, that we're essentially discharged from those pipes through and then overland flow into the basin from there?
There's sort of like you can kind of tell there's sort of like a drainage ditch, I guess.
Yeah, a swale in there somewhere.
Yeah, in between the outfalls there and into the basin. But I think some of the documentation that was submitted showed that drainage in this area used to flow to the south before King Street was reconstructed for the bridge to go over 495. And so, once they did that construction, now the stormwater from that area flows, to the north here into that basin instead of to the south where it used to flow. And that's why they put those pipes in there.
So are we at the point where we would like to schedule a site walk? Where are we at the present time to go forward with this?
Sure, we're happy to schedule a site walk with you folks to walk through the site.
Okay, well, I'm not sure if I missed this. Well, the purpose that the water department acquired this piece of land is what?
This is the proposed location for their new wastewater treatment facility.
So the wastewater treatment facility, is that related to the sewer downtown?
It is, yes. So the wastewater collected during the collection system from the downtown area would be treated here and then conveyed up to the Littleton High School for groundwater recharge once that is cleaned.
So
there'll be no discharge of anything on this site.
So is the reason this site was chosen, is it because it's gravity fed, or?
It was a central location. That was one of the main reasons for the site being chosen.
Yeah,
Flow
And
will
Carl,
actually be pumped to the site.
Carl, to give you a little context there, I actually think there's better sites in town for this, but they were taken off our list of options by town meeting. So,
okay.
Sorry, I think I might have missed this too. I guess I'm confused because, so now the water department owns the land under this stormwater basement and what is the parcel exactly? Is it the entire thing, including that goes way back? It's the entire thing you're showing, right? Or where's the
Correct. So
outline of the
this
property?
This here is the parcel line.
So how did you end up actually being able to purchase a basin owned by DOT that used to be owned by DOT? I just don't understand why that got to be a part of the parcel.
Yeah, no, that documentation shows that they didn't receive permission from the landowner to do that at the time. The contractor that was doing the work just built it there.
Oh,
I mean, this was obviously 55 years ago. That sort of thing happens even nowadays, but I imagine back then it happened even more. And so there's some of that documentation shows that the landowner at that time was trying to, recover the value of the land lost there because it was previously, usable land, and it's not anymore. So there was some discussion in that documentation about Mass DOT reimbursing him. I think it was like $30,000 at the time, something like that. So it was sort of a mistake or an accident that they built it there, but nevertheless they did. So they never took any ownership of it, it seems. The town's not aware of Mass DOT ever maintaining that.
So you're going to have to end up possibly maintaining something that's serving 495.
It's mostly serving King Street, and if we were to try to use that to take some of the stormwater from our development on the site, then yeah, I guess we would.
Okay.
Amy, can I ask you a question about the riverfront area here?
Yep.
Can you help me understand in a scenario like this where Beaver Brook is kind of wide open here, right? Like it's not exactly a defined channel.
Which is why that riverfront extends so deep into the site on the west, because it's a really wet area in there. So mean annual high water is way out of what you might see as a channel on the aerial photograph.
Okay, and that's what I wanted clarification on. So the 200-foot riverfront area is 200 feet off of mean annual high water.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
So in
200
practice, that's actually significantly farther off of the low flow channel than the
Yes.
mean. Okay.
It's like the mean annual high water is really at the edge of the marsh, more or less. So-
Right, and my understanding on that is that area was not always so wet, and that's because we've dealt with so many other homes in that area, and that was because of some of the beavers, probably two decades ago, that channel has really kind of broadened as well.
So in terms of defining that in the field, right, given the magnitude of this, I presume we're going to do a site walk of some sort. How do we define the actual riverfront area when we're in the field?
It is flagged, and you'll see in some areas it's right next to the BVW line. So
Okay.
there's a little fringe of the more upland wetlands, and then it just drops off to essentially the flooded marsh.
Okay,
So
so it'll be
it's
flagged.
it's a conservative or wide line out there. I think some people may have tried to just push it out to the channel, but they went with the true mean annual where you see the highest high water on an annual basis. But probably not for discussion tonight, but also to keep in the back of your mind that this project would have an exemption from the riverfront area.
Mm-hmm.
And when was this flagged?
June.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the commission? We will be going through this again, obviously for the next meeting again, but if there is time, we'd like to go ahead and try and set forth a site visit. Would anyone like to throw some dates out? It's going to be hard because of the lack of sunshine.
Prefer to just disagree with everyone's dates when they throw them out instead of throwing my own out.
Would a Saturday morning walk work for everybody?
I think I agree, Andrew. We might have to looking at some alternative dates that are not midweek. Saturday mornings could work for me.
I could do the 11th. I couldn't do the 4th.
Okay.
That works.
Oh, I can't do the 11th.
Do we need, does the commission feel as though they want an engineer on site with the magnitude of this and so many?
You want the wetland scientist on site in case there's any questions or checking soils or anything like that, so.
Yep.
We can probably, there was another wetland scientist with me in the field, and she might be available to attend want to keep it on the 11th.
Okay. Would someone like to entertain a time that might work on the 11th?
(8:30).
Sorry, what was that time?
8:30?
Sure.
All right, so let's go ahead and put that as a hold mark for Saturday, December the 11th at 8:30 to meet as you drive in that driveway. We may have to try and come up with another midweek date as well. So those that can't, just go ahead, let's email Amy and see if we can do an early morning midweek or something, which.
Yep, that would be appreciated. I
helpful.
can't make the 11th.
Okay.
So.
So as part of a first discussion, I think this was helpful. And we will continue this to the next meeting, which is December the 14th. Okay.
Sarah, can I ask one last question of the
Sure, go
applicants
ahead,
before
Chase.
they
Yep.
depart? Next time we meet, Corey, do you think you could put together for us just a real high level timeline of sort of how this will come together? I think it would be helpful for us to understand what it is the applicant's looking for here, not just in terms of wetland delineations and so on, but also what the overall project schedule looks like, as you conceive of it right now.
Yep. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Understanding that it's likely to change and shift, and it's your best guess.
Yeah. Thanks, Chase. That'd be helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining us. We're going to now say goodbye and move on to the next hearing. So our next is 8 o'clock discussion enforcement order for 15 Douglas. Let's see. And I believe that they are here. Amy, if you're able to share photograph the edge of the cul-de-sac.
I think Mr. Patel actually has a presentation that he can throw up. Do you have that you can share your screen?
Yeah, we have just kind of a brief overview and then some slides to share with the committee.
Okay.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. My name is Binal Patel. This is my husband, Amit. Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time to listen to us this evening. First and foremost, we want to start by apologizing to the Conservation Committee for not reaching out about our patio project before we began the work. We had no intention of circumventing the process or disrespecting the committee's work. We made the mistake of assuming, because so many of our neighbors in our community had recently put up patios, that there were no permits or approvals required. Our contractor did reach out to the building department because of the retaining walls that we had planned to put in, and he was told that no permits were required for those. And we made an incorrect assumption that that was all the approval we needed, and we would like to start by apologizing for that first and foremost. The reason we decided to build a patio is twofold. The first reason is obviously the space in the backyard for our family. The second reason is the grade in the backyard, which you'll see in the pictures in a minute, was high and not level to the deck when you walk down the stairs of the deck. It did not feel safe for our elderly parents to walk out into the backyard and go walk down the side. And as part of this project, we wanted to put stairs and a retaining wall so that individuals walking up and down the grades of the landscape could do so safely. We understand that this is not a small mistake, and we want to take any swift action needed to remediate and mitigate the impact that the project could have on the wetland. We're near the end stage of the project, as you'll see in the photos, and we're hopeful that there might be a way to complete it before the winter is in full effect. If possible, to avoid a formal permitting process, which would delay our ability to resume work and really the contractor's availability at this point with winter approaching. We're very willing and happy to work with the committee to ensure we're abiding by all necessary precautions and requirements for working near the wetland. And we will share a few slides right now to show the current work of the project and the mitigation that's been done since the stop order.
I'm going to share my screen. So a little bit about the patio project. As you can see here, our house location, and we wanted to put approximately a 20-foot by 30-foot patio on the back side of the garage of the house. In the pictures here, our deck actually goes all the way to where the patio is. It's not clear in the pictures in these final drawings. So the patio would begin at the landing step of our deck down there. Like my wife explained, it's not, the current landscape wasn't level to the landing step of the deck and was kind of unsafe. So in part of this project was to wall off the right side of the patio there so that you could make a turn off of the deck down the stairs to a kind of level ground to the basement level. As part of the project, there was excessive dirt that we had the contractor move to the other side of the house. You can see in the blue there. So when the stop work order was provided to us, one of the issues was also the pile of dirt that's there. The reason we put the pile of dirt there was, again, that part of the landscape was not very level and it was unsafe when I was mowing our lawn there. So what we wanted to do is just use the excess dirt to level off that area to be a little bit safer and easier to mow our lawn. So these are the patio plans. As you can see the almost 31 inch or 31 foot deck. Patio. The wooden stairs are our deck stairs. They would kind of land on to the patio and then stairs down to kind of the bottom grade of our house that is kind of level to the walkout associated to the basement. On the left side, we would also have some stairs because there's some grade there that would need to be accommodated for. We're going to be putting in concrete pavers, the Yankee cobble pavers there. Concrete, the material will be laid on, as they call it, stone dust, and then use sand on top. We anticipate water to filter through between the pavers in that space. So that's kind of the patio plans. I don't know if before we kind of go, sorry, my wife is navigating. Before we go there, I just wanted to see if there's any questions on the project itself or the location of the patio.
Mr. Patel, could you orient me a little bit to what we're looking at here? I'm sorry, I didn't totally follow the. Yeah, so this is the garage side of our house where I'm circling my mouse. The patio would be where this blue area would be. Mm-hmm. If you see this line, I believe, and Amy, please correct me, this is the 100-foot buffer zone that our house currently sits in. So a portion of the patio, actually, we didn't know, sat in that 100-foot buffer zone. And so, so that's where that issue is. And this is our lot 48, when our house was built. Okay.
So and part of our house is actually, part of the house is built in the buffer zone.
Could you indicate what was the wetland line though? Is that the dark dots there?
You can just barely see wetland flag B112 at the bottom of the screen.
Okay. So
And,
the dark
the dots in the slash, that's the 50-foot and the erosion controls, the original erosion controls.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
And Amy, was there, there's an order of conditions here in indications on the deed, I presume, is that correct?
There's an order of conditions it has not gotten, which is the whole Douglas Road, which has not gotten the certificate of compliance yet.
Okay. So the project as a whole hasn't been closed out. Okay.
Correct. For any of the houses in there. Which is really just the Patel's house at this end and then the other end of Douglas.
Mr. Patel, would you mind to orient me? This is actually what I meant. I just had a hard time following this slide. Could you orient me to where, assume I'm looking at a plan view here, where is the house in this plan view?
So the garage side would be,
the garage, I'm sorry.
The garage would be, no, it's not. The garage would be on this side of the house.
Okay.
All right, so this is right against the garage wall. And then this, where it says wood stairs, our current deck lands onto this level where this patio will be potentially. But prior to that, it was grass. It was landing to grass. And so this was elevated. And then on the right side of our house, we have a walkout from our basement that is a grade down below. And so we wanted to put these stairs in because when somebody made the turn from here, it was a pretty big dip down to get to that level. And we have, my parents are with us quite a bit. And so for them to walk in the backyard, it was pretty dangerous in this area when they went down below the deck. And I can show you the pictures subsequent after this, so you could get an idea of what those stairs look like.
I think it would be helpful to go ahead to keep going to move to the photographs that you'd like to share.
Yeah, so this is what I was mentioning about the deck stairs. And so they land, to where the patio would be. And then we would, we're looking to build, a walk down so that it's level to the bottom part of our house. So this is the retaining wall on the right side of the house that's closest to the wetland. And then to the right picture, this picture on the right is the other retaining wall on the far end of the house, not in the buffer zone, I would say. And in between is where the patio would be. That's the retaining walls currently that we've put up so far. And the next slide is from the top of the deck. You can see where the patio would ultimately sit and be kind of flush with the grade of the grass at that point. So currently, we stopped work and the piles of stone dust would be even leveled off, and the patio stone would be starting to put on there right now. And when we got the stop work order, we talked to Amy about what we need to do. So right away we put up the hay rolls. I don't really know what they're called, but we acquired them and put them on the edges, just in case if there was any erosion that came from the work that we were doing to mitigate any of that. And then if you go to the next slide, we had it go all around to the pile of dirt that we had laid on that end. This is the other side of the house where we had put the excess dirt. What we want to do here is use this dirt to level off this area so that, it's not such a steep decline. Again, based on your advice or recommendations, we would, if this needed to be removed, we would remove it. But that was our initial thought of what we would do with the dirt there. So that's kind of overall the presentation. Or like my wife said, our goal would be to complete the patio work and spread the dirt piles before the winter is full effect. If we need to, after we spread the dirt piles, put any hay netting over it, so we reduce the amount of erosion that could happen potentially from that. We would do that. Likelihood of putting seed down and any grass germinating right now is unlikely, so we would kind of take those mitigation measures and things like that. Our contractor, and I believe so, we could finish the work in the next 7 to 10 days. And so we're hoping that before it gets really frozen, the ground gets frozen, we could potentially finish this project and the remediations that need to happen from there.
Could you please indicate where on the plot plan these piles are placed right now?
Yeah, so
where within the
so you could see here it's levels of level off dirt piles. That's where I drew the outline of it right now. That's where it sits.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I think Amy also had a photograph. I'm not sure, Amy, if you want to screen share or if you still have the photo from the dirt piles as well.
Amy, I think you're on mute. I have additional pictures if you want to see them too.
I think it would be helpful because then you can see the scope, obviously, because we're not there in person to be able to see that relative.
It'll take me a second to get to it, but the pictures that he showed give you an idea of the dirt piles.
Okay.
Can I digress for a quick second here, and I want to go down the path of in understanding how Mr. and Mrs. Patel were unaware of the conditions and the fact that they were within a 100-foot buffer. So if a project is open and it hasn't been recorded on the deed and the property transfers to the new, what's the pathway by which the new property owners become aware of the order conditions on their property, other than the goodwill of the developer that's selling it to them?
So Amy, you're on mute, but my understanding of is that as part of the process for the buyers, that the seller was supposed to mention to every owner that they need to understand the impact of any additions or altered work to their property. Because we went through this quite a bit a year or two ago when the majority of properties were selling and people were making amendments.
You're right, Sarah.
That's why Mr. Guthrie was brought in as well to help clarify this. And we had assurances that everyone who bought property was going to be told.
So going back to what you're saying, Sarah, I believe that however the houses were laid out on these subdivisions that we approved, because of the wetland situation out there, what we saw in the plans was kind of it. That was going to be the extent of any of the improvements to each house. That was my understanding.
I think in what they said was that every homeowner would have to come back individually on their own accord to the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, so in Durkee, each of the houses were permitted individually. But by the time this is phase 4, it was just permitted as the whole piece of road and the houses that were applicable at the end of it. So actually, I'd have to go back to the Registry of Deeds and see how the order conditions was recorded onto each property or onto the one property that this used to be. But it should have popped up in the title search.
I guess that's what I want to get to is I understand that when you buy a house, there's a pile of paperwork you sign, but it is fundamentally important to me in making a determination here about whether the applicants were provided the information and missed it, or were they not provided the information? And I really want to understand that because it has bigger implications than this particular project.
Chase, if they weren't notified, this is not the first time that this happened on this particular subdivision.
Well, yeah, we're well aware of that.
Well, yeah, it's one thing not to be notified, but another thing that, that Amy was pointing out, there should be something on the deed, which every landowner should receive as a part of their deed, and hopefully be aware of that way as well.
Well, with both Cooper as well as Durkee, they're each new owner before the certificate of compliance was issued was required to sign like a little waiver and come in for a chat with the Conservation Commission, which I say in both projects was close to 100%. We may have missed one because I can't keep track of when the properties sell. With this phase 4 of K, it was a little different because it was all just one application. It wasn't for each one. So I would have to go back to the order conditions and see what it said about, well, actually, no, that's a standard one, that if there's a new owner, they should come in. But if they weren't aware of the order conditions.
As a contractor that is going in to do this work and they go to pull any sort of building permit or whatnot through the town, how are they not made aware that there was an open order on this property?
it would not have been in the building files. And the question, I don't know what discussion they actually had, was whether or not they needed a permit. And since the walls are less than 4 feet, they don't need a building permit. So it never got into it. If the walls had been over 4 feet, it would have been a building permit and I would have gotten a copy of it. And for what it's worth, we are trying to better organize, figure out how to get all the subdivision, planning board, building, board of health, conservation, all onto each property. But that's been quite a lift.
Okay. So we need to keep this discussion going. So what would we like to do?
At the risk of speaking first, and I'm always hesitant to do so, and yet always find myself doing so. The fill component of this, I'm not comfortable with. Full stop. It's closer to the wetland. It's not going to substantially change I think the usability of that property, and it's not going to be stable for a long time. So I'd rather see that material pulled out of the 100-foot buffer entirely. I'm curious to hear what other people think with respect to the patio, but I have pretty firm feelings on the fill component.
Right. I feel in the present time, we need to ask them to go ahead and remove that quickly and try and do as less damage to the ground that is stable and secure with the grass right now, to go ahead and do that. And then perhaps the commissioners would like to go out and visit the site and come up with their thoughts on that as well. But I think going forward, we do need to remove the fill as soon as possible to get it stabilized. Other commissioners?
I completely agree with that. I'm
Agreed.
not comfortable seeing the fill inside of being filled in there.
So how would you like for them to remove the fill outside of doing it cautiously? Will you allow small equipment, or do you want them to do that by hand?
I think it's too much to do it by hand. There's too much material there.
I agree. I say
Okay.
it means that it was placed there.
So would you like to limit the size of equipment so that you're not going to do as much tracking?
A small piece of equipment with a good operator, I think, could do a good job there.
Okay. So you're talking more like a skid steer.
Yes.
Okay. So a skid steer is fairly, it's smaller. You wouldn't bring a big backhoe in. So
Skid steer's already on site by the looks of it. So.
True. Okay.
And the only other question would be how to proceed with the patio itself. There's basically two options. One is they could do this under the enforcement order and just finalize it that way, or ask them to file a permit application.
I have very little appetite for smoothing a process. I'd rather see a formal application, essentially exactly what we would ask an applicant to do if they were proposing this from first principles. Otherwise, and Mr. and Mrs. Talley very much understand where you guys are coming from here, but we can't create a scenario in which it's easier to circumvent the rules than it is to follow them.
I just have a concern that the way the site is now is pretty unstable as well, where the patio is almost similar to the other piles. So if there's any way to stabilize that in the meantime, because if they're going to go through the permitting process, that it will probably be at least like a couple of weeks, maybe, before it gets started.
So I think what we can do is ask them to add some wattles around that. So what you referred to as hay bales that are in the conical shape, they're called wattles. And so they can just go ahead and make something that surrounds that area that is disturbed.
So add sort of a second line of wattles up against the patio area.
Correct. Yep. And I think that will, hopefully they can have their submittal in quickly, and that will be able to get done before the ground freezes, would be the hopeful.
So I can write them a letter.
Ask them to reach out to you perhaps tomorrow. The town hall is closed on Thursday. Unsure if it will be open on Friday, but you can certainly communicate through email. But I think the commission is giving you the go-ahead to go ahead and remove the stockpiles of the material that's there. We meet again in 2 weeks on the December 14th. I don't know, Amy, if that gets posted in time or not.
They
3 weeks, right?
pretty much have a notice of intent ready to go in case they needed it. So they'll be able to make the filing deadline, I think, for that. And one other thing is, I would also need you guys to vote to ratify the enforcement order in the first place. That does need a vote.
Okay. Do we have someone that can make that motion, please? A lot of you are on mute.
I'll make a motion that the board vote to ratify the enforcement order on 15 Douglas Road.
Do we have a second?
No, it says 15 Douglas. Okay, sorry.
15 Douglas. Kyle, did you second? I think. Okay, Kyle second. So can we do a roll call, please, Andrew?
All right.
All those in favor?
Okay, so Chase,
Chase Garbage guy.
Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Carl,
Carl Melberg, aye.
myself, I. It's unanimous.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So we will be in touch with you, and if you have any questions, please communicate through Amy.
Sorry, can I ask the applicants to provide one other thing? I'd really like to understand what they were given when they acquired the property in terms of notification. That's really, Mr. and Mrs. Patel, in my opinion, transcends your particular project and really speaks to a broader concern I have with respect to people in exactly your situation and ensuring that they've got the information so that we don't get in this in the future. So if you wouldn't mind, I would really appreciate it if you could take a look at the documentation you went through. If you were notified, I want to know that. I won't look askance at your application accordingly, but I do want to understand how this came to be, because it is a broader and more policy type problem.
Chase, what kind of notification are you referring to? I just want to make sure I'm clear.
You know, the pile of paperwork about as tall as you are when you acquire property, probably somewhere in there.
Yeah.
You know, the stuff that you're not looking for anymore when you just sign. It might be a notification of the order of conditions on the property. It might be.
Okay, order of conditions. Yeah, I just wanted to see like what specifically I'm looking up for.
They can send you a copy of it so you know what it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somehow that you were notified that there is wetlands that needs to be protected on your property. Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. So it's 8:33. We're now opening the 8:15 discussion enforcement order on 6A Grimes Lane. So they have submitted dated November 17th with their restoration sequence and such. Who's here to address that?
Mark Slager from Allen Engineering. We met out on the site. I developed a restoration plan. I submitted it to Amy for a quick review, made some minor changes to the seed mix that we're proposing. If you'd like, I could share my screen so we can go through the plan.
Yep, that would be helpful. Thank you, Mark. While we're waiting for him to share the screen, I'll make note that I was out there this afternoon prior to dark, and the dumpster is there, and there is gravel on property that had been added since the site walk. Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, at first I'll start with the gravel that was dumped there the day I did the detailed topographic survey, which was the day after the meeting. I believe it was would have been the 10th of November. So with the day before, we actually received the enforcement order.
Okay.
No work has
So
happened.
as a point of order with that, Mark, so your plan that is right here on the screen is dated November 17th. So I did not see that gravel referenced on this plan. Is that correct?
That's correct. I did not
So
show.
you had one week to make it accurate. So I would like the commission to know that this does not reflect what is on site. Okay, so carry on.
Okay, yeah, there is a pile of crushed stone that was added to the site. It is outside the outer lit row of hay bales and silt fence, or rather wattles and silt fence within the approved work area. I didn't think it was a significant feature that needed to be added to the plan, so I didn't show it. I think what I was focusing on was the amount of the work area that was disturbed prior to the issuance of the order of conditions. So that was my focus on the plan. So I've detailed that area. I've shown the ponded area, the limit of disturbance, and then also added a temporary sediment basin. As you recall, there's some standing water in that excavated area. The temporary sediment basin is basically where the house is going to go. So we're just utilizing a portion of the foundation hole for that. I've developed a restoration sequence. We can go through that, and sequence number one is to remove the dumpster. We haven't done that yet because it would require mobilizing some of the equipment that we're going to be needing to excavate the temporary sediment basin and whatnot. So that's still in place, but that's actually number one on the sequence. There's also a small pile of brush that's on the opposite side of the lower silt fence, right in here. So that's going to have to be removed and disposed of off-site before they do anything else. And then the next step would be to construct the temporary sediment basin and install the silt fence and wattles along the top of the ridge of the basin. And then the water from the ponded area can be pumped into that basin. The soil that's removed to create the basin will then be placed in the ponded area to grade that out, to subgrade, and then the top of it will be loamed and mulched. We can't seed it this time of year. Actually, as you know, that would be pretty ineffective. So we're just going to cover it with a double net straw blanket, which will keep everything in place. The area will be very flat once the grading is done, so we don't expect any erosion. The lower silt fence will remain in place. The upper silt fence will be reestablished once the area is regraded. In the spring, when the growing season starts, we'll peel back the blanket and seed it, and then cover it with hay mulch until it grows back. And that's what we've got for a sequence. I've selected a conservation wildlife mix, and the composition of that seed mix is provided on the table, along with a location of where to acquire that mix. I know the enforcement order requires that all of the grading and everything to be done before anything else can be done on site as far as constructing the house or the septic system. But what we would ask is that Amy have the authority to go out and review everything and make sure everything was done in accordance with this restoration plan, with the exception of the seeding, and then authorize the work to continue per the order of conditions. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the commission.
Can I ask just point of order for the commissioners to define your purple line versus your red lines, please?
Okay, the long dashed red line is the 100-foot buffer zone. The shorter dashed red line is the 50-foot no disturb. The purple lines right here represent the silt fence and wattles. There's another row of silt fence and wattles that will be placed on the top of the berm for the temporary sediment basin. And then there's another row of silt fence and wattles that would be placed on the down gradient side of the soil stockpile area. The black short dashed line represents the edge of the disturbed area. And then you can see this dashed double dot line here, which represent the edge of the ponded area. There's a small island that was not disturbed, but so that's shown on the plan as well. So you can see that the ponded area, the silt fence goes right through the ponded area, as we saw out on the site.
Mark, is this the slide that if you scroll further to the top has the driveway, or is it there you go. Okay. So if you can just reference, we had questions on the trees, pardon me, with the orange snow fencing as well.
Yes.
So just for the commissioners that were on site know where things are. So if you could just use your cursor to go over that, and then also with your cursor note where the pile of gravel is presently in the resource area.
It's in the buffer zone, not the resource area.
Oh, sorry, buffer zone. The 50
it's right around where it says lot 6A. There's a pile of gravel. I think it was just one truckload, one dump truck full of gravel, crushed stone that was going to be used for the foundation hole. The existing dumpster is right about in this location, and I've proposed a new dumpster location outside of the root protection zone and outside of the buffer zone. This should be a fairly convenient spot for them because the house is actually going to be back in this location, so it'll be accessible but not in the way, and then they'll also be able to come in and, you know, empty the dumpster or change out the dumpster from time to time.
So this house is fully permitted for what looks like 80% of it is in the 50 to 100 foot zone.
Yes.
Okay.
If you'd like, I can call up the notice of intent plan that was approved.
So
Would you mind to do that? I would appreciate that. It would help orient me a little bit.
Yep. And then also I have a question of dewatering. Historically, I like to see dewatering not in a buffer zone, if possible, to move that to the back.
Do we lose Mark there?
He's just finding it. So as a point of order, just I printed off the enforcement order, which outlines what was supposed to be done. And as we discussed from the last meeting, one item on page 3, dumpster shall be relocated immediately. Owners was notified on 11/5. So here we are, 2-3 weeks later, and dumpster's
Right.
still there.
I did notify him that very day, right after the meeting. And, you know, he just told me that he was going to wait until he mobilized the equipment to do the work before he moved the dumpster. So this is the plan.
Mr. Sleeger, I don't mean to be disrespectful with this question, but if our order is going to be disregarded as it comes through you, do we need to request that the applicant actually shows up in person instead of sending you?
I believe that would be completely up to you. If you want to request that, I would relay that message to him.
That's what we have done on this property a few times.
I understand that you convey
the fines as well for inaction.
You know, if I could have made it happen, I would have. But I'm here to represent him, and I relayed the message from the commission. This is the plan that shows what was approved. You can see approximately, maybe 60% of the house is within the 100-foot buffer. The driveway and the garage is outside the 100-foot buffer, or at least the parking area for the driveway is outside the buffer. The driveway is actually going to be moved down a little bit. And this is the tree. So we've shown, it was actually a later plan.
Yeah, there's a slightly later plan.
Okay. There it is. Okay, there's the later plan. Sorry about that. Yeah, this one shows the house was twisted a little bit to make the driveway a little more usable since we relocated the construction entrance and the driveway entrance further away from the tree. So you can see there's still at about 60% or so of the house within the 100-foot buffer zone.
At this point, I'm not sure what relocating the driveway further into the buffer zone got us, given the potential damage to the tree.
That was something the commission requested, that we move the driveway further away from the tree so that we could protect the roots.
No, I understand that it was predicated, of course, on actually protecting the roots as a matter of
right
during the course of construction.
Mm-hmm.
And it appears to me that the net result is that we now have a tree that's had a bunch of crap dumped on its roots and trucks run over it, and a driveway that's more into the buffer zone than it otherwise would have been. It seems like a pretty
Right, I think we've lost
ineffectual outcome.
Right, I think the loss has been on both sides. Okay. Commission members have questions?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, can we go back to the dewatering? So I see that the basin, you have a couple elevations there. It looks like it's gonna be 2 feet deep. How much water is still in this area that it looks like it's a 1-for-1 replication of the existing ponded area. I don't like that it's, only, what is that, 20 feet outside of the 50-foot no disturb area that would be pumping more water to. I'd like to move that outside of the 100-foot, which sounds reasonable if you said you wanted to put it where the excavation area for your foundation is going to go. We should be able to use the left side of that foundation instead, right? And then second, if you could just explain the thought process behind the size, if there was like actual calculations done, or I imagine you're hoping some of this will re-infiltrate into the ground if it really needs to be this large of an area.
Yeah, the intent is to just have it infiltrate into the ground. But we utilize the right hand, as we're looking at it, the right hand section of the house, because that's where the cellar is. The upper section is the garage, which won't be as deep. So that excavation is only a few feet. The garage floor is 270.5, whereas the existing grade is 268. So they'll only be digging down to elevation 265 or so for the frost walls on the bottom of the footing. And then the slab is going to be built up on grade. There may be a small area behind the garage for a family room and a basement underneath that, but I don't believe it will be enough for the ponded area. I'd rather not discharge it down into where the septic system is going to go. I don't think that would be a smart alternative either. I think we're just pumping it into an excavation that's already going to be created. Seems to make the most sense, as opposed to creating another depression on the site and disturbing more of the site. And then as far as that, we're just going to let the water dissipate into the ground and infiltrate into the ground, as opposed to pumping it overland and letting it flow across and ultimately into the wetlands. So it's better this way, especially if there's any sediment in the water.
So based on your recent visit, do you feel as though there's been infiltration already? Because I was out there today and it's very wet. In addition,
It is very wet. It is very wet. I think one of the situations is we're down closer to the water table there. And there's also a layer of sediment on the bottom that's preventing it from infiltrating into the ground. What we're going to do here is excavate into the native soil and throw in a layer of crushed stone and then pump it into that. That'll help.
It just, these are all existing contours. Well, so what are the proposed contours are the ones that have ovals around them? Is that?
Yes. You want me to go back to the other plan?
Oh, sorry. I have it up. I'm looking at it on another monitor. But okay. Yeah, if you could.
To Kyle's point, there's no way we would ever allow this if it didn't already exist, right? Like if you asked us, hey, we'd like to put an infiltration basin in the 50 to 100, when you have space outside of the 100, the answer would be, sorry, that's inconvenient, but it needs to be outside of the 100. I just don't understand why we're contemplating it in a scenario, in this particular scenario.
Well, I thought it would be the best idea since we're going to excavate for the cellar hole anyway. And the cellar hole is going to be within the 50 to 100.
The cellar hole is going to be soaking wet.
That's exactly where I was going, Carl. I mean, you're showing an elevation of 262 around this existing ponded area, and that's where you want to put the bottom of this sediment basin. Those are the same elevations. That's not going to get you anything. I assume go uphill outside of the 100-foot buffer where you'll actually be able to get it go back in the ground.
We can dig it out in the left side of the house and pump it up there. I mean, if that's what the commission wants, that's what we'll do.
Oh, you can also, as we've done on other sites, you can also take the water off as well. If it's not going to infiltrate somewhere without trying to come up with another manipulation process.
Well, we can, yeah.
And that way you'll be able to see what your water table's doing on the site.
The problem with this site is that even though a lot of the areas don't show up as they show up as non-jurisdictional, the site is very wet. I mean, it was really, when I saw those soils, it was very, obvious to me with what the water does.
I would agree that the site is very wet, especially this year where we've had so much rain. We've actually had a hard time. There were 2 lots we couldn't perk because the groundwater was still too high, even in August. So I could certainly come up with a different way of dewatering, pumping it outside the buffer zone into a temporary impoundment, and then let it trickle out outside the buffer zone and flow overland. And make sure that all of that occurs outside the buffer zone.
And that's a course of action that we've done on that side of the road successfully.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the contours. You're going uphill as you get out of the buffer zone, right? So you wouldn't have to excavate down to elevation 262 to try to create this sediment basin, and you'd actually be able to allow it to reinfiltrate.
Okay.
What's a timeline on doing this?
They were expecting to have it done by the end of this week, as long as we got the go ahead tonight. They expected it to be about 2 days worth of work. In which case they could start it tomorrow and then finish it up on Friday, possibly Saturday.
My proposal to the commission is that we give them the applicants a reasonable amount of time to remedy it, and then we begin enforcing fines. And Mr. Slager, I don't mean any disrespect here, but if your client is unwilling to listen to your advice here, then I don't know as we have a lot of other recourse, but to avail ourselves of imposing fines.
I agree. So let's recap of what we're asking the applicant to do in terms of dewatering, because we've had many different options proposed this evening.
Okay, I will amend the, let me go back to the other plan.
Jason, are you proposing to move the driveway back closer to the tree as well?
I don't freaking know. Both options suck, right? We've probably damaged the tree.
I would rather move it closer to the tree because it's already been impacted. So when we start to think of on the right side, looking at this, we're going to be talking about snow storage. The driveway is going to be closer to the wetlands. So I feel as though the original, it's unfortunate that they can't read their plans or put snow fencing up.
That's what I was contemplating when I pointed out the difficulty of those two choices. I don't like either option. I like the idea of having an intact tree and what we put forward originally.
Right.
But yeah, I think if we're going to kill the tree anyway, then we might as well minimize the impact to the 100-foot buffer.
Or you could also ask for plantings as well to start to look at potential impact that has been done to that tree. We can have that on further future discussions, but let's carry on with what the commission is asking the applicant to do starting tomorrow. So what I'm hearing is that we're not digging another pond, that we're going to try and surface drain.
So Mark, are you picturing sort of a very large, probably graveled hay bale corral?
Like we did over at Cooper.
I think probably what would make the most sense is, since we're not going to excavate this, we won't have a stockpile area, but we could use this as a dewatering location with a double row of wattles or something like that to retain it and let it seep into the ground.
And you did have to bring material in to the restoration area?
Well, we could excavate part of the cellar hole that's outside the buffer zone, or excavate part of the cellar hole here and use that material, and just not use it as a dewatering hole.
Yeah, I don't think it makes sense for them to bring soil in to have to excavate and create bigger stockpiles on the site later on.
Just trying to manage expectations.
Yeah. And I think this would speed up their timeline a little bit, instead of having to excavate that out to, well, I guess if you're gonna excavate it for fill anyway, probably not saving too
So
much time. But
I would very much like for them to stake an area so that everyone's on the same page of an area that they believe they want to dewater in, and then a commissioner with notification can go out. Anyone can, so if that's staked tomorrow, one of us can go out and say yes or no, and then whoever is going to be the operator will know exactly where any type of material needs to go. But I don't think that you can just say carte blanche to them. You can go ahead and put it in that area. We need to have a defined timeline and size and specs for the dewatering area.
Size is a big one to me, Sarah. We're doing a lot of this by the seat of our pants, and it's a lot of yeah. That seems like it should be big enough.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking more minimum, so that way we're kind of dissipating the impact. So to make it longer, and I'm thinking longer and narrow, more narrow, instead of just a traditional corral. But I would defer to Amy on that, because we've done a couple of them over on that side of the road.
There's certainly plenty of room on the site to elongate this area and just have it follow the contours and let it filter through. So if we can have it following the contours, you're going to have a lot more sheet flow instead of a concentrated flow. So we can do that and have it staked. I'm also looking at the weather. It looks like there's possible rain on Friday, so it may not be a good idea to be moving around in the rain, especially close to the resource area. So, we can get as much done tomorrow before the rain hits. Obviously Thursday there's no work, and then Friday we'll just have to wait and see what gets done, but we'll just keep moving forward, weather permitting.
But is the commission talking about letting you move forward before seeing another plan and the staking?
You want to see another plan showing where that new dewatering is going?
My 2 cents here is that someone should see a plan and someone should see a staking before we do it. I don't think it is worth delaying it 3 weeks until we meet collectively.
I agree with Jay. I mean, we see a plan here, but I think seeing it in the field is what should take priority. If they can get it staked tomorrow and somebody's available to see it, then I think it seems like we have a pretty good idea of what we're expecting of them at this point.
And then I would say if within a week of the Conservation Commission evaluating it and approving it, it needs to be implemented or fines start to accrue.
Right, and there has to be a daily log of what's happening on the site, as there's supposed to be anyways during enforcement. So I think I would make sure that we have a timeline of how the site is moving forward.
Okay.
So I guess, as Chase has alluded, if we hear nothing and nothing happens, Monday rolls around, I think fines would start on Monday.
Okay.
Especially if that dumpster is not moved by Monday.
Feeling generous, huh?
It's Thanksgiving, Chase.
It is Thanksgiving.
I'm not sure why it can't
Okay.
be moved tomorrow, but okay.
Well, if you can do the staking, then that would give the commissioners, even if they can't do it all together, over the weekend to get out there and look at things.
I would say that if any 2 commissioners can go on site within 24 hours of notification that you have the stakes up, I know I, as chairman, will be here. I can go on site.
I'll be around all weekend.
Yep.
Somebody just tell me when to go and I'll go take a look too.
Yep. So Mark, you have your marching orders that if you just need to send an email to any of us or call us and let us know, we will do that within 24 hours. But
We'll do that.
okay.
Just don't do the notification like Wednesday at 5.
Yep. So, okay. All right.
All
We have
right.
to keep going. All right. We hope that you can translate to your owner, applicant, boss that we're done playing.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Good night. Have a good
Are you
Thanksgiving.
asking to come back in on December 14th
Yes.
with Chris Finnerl?
Yep. It will be continued until then.
And Mr. Slager, I would advocate that you'd be wise to advise your client to participate in the meeting as well.
I will.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
We're closing that.
You too.
So now we are opening the continued public hearing, which was slated for 8:30. It's now 9:04. Notice of intent, 5 Cottage Way, U26-9-0, Mass DEP 204-933, construction of a new septic system. This is a continued hearing. I'm sure people have had an opportunity to look of comments of support, non-support. Commissioner members have seen there. I think there was probably about 8 of them or so. Who's here to speak to 5 Cottage Way?
Hi, Sarah. David Cowell, Senior Wetland Scientist with Hancock Associates.
Thank you. Welcome back, David. So David, it has been a few, I want to say probably months, although time does elude me. If you can just
2 or 3, yep.
bring the commission up to date where we were and where we are, please?
Yes, all right. So, thank you, Sarah. It has been a few months, so worth revisiting briefly where we are and where we are now. So, again, this is notice of intent was filed in request for a septic system on a two-bedroom house fronting Fort Pond. Do I have a share screen ability? I can pull the plan up and just repeat this.
Go ahead, David.
Right. Can you guys see my plan and see my cursor?
No, now we can.
Okay, all right. So again, just to recap the existing conditions in how we got here, existing two-bedroom house, frontage to Fort Pond up here. The blue line demarcates the bank flags along Fort Pond that broadcasts the 50-foot buffer zone and a 100-foot buffer zone away from it. There's an intermittent stream here demarcated by the blue lines. This also has this dotted line is 50-foot no disturb, and that in the north direction, and there's the 50-foot no build zone in the opposite direction. Currently, the single family house is being served. It doesn't have modern plumbing. There is a outhouse here. This is an unlined cesspool which is used as human waste. And here, there's a location where gray water is being discharged, basically at surface into a gravel pad, which is where the sink and shower are discharging. We ran into some, I guess, challenges in terms of the evaluation of what we can afford to do here. We asked for a waiver from the 50-foot no disturb zone for this area of impact in red right here. We proposed to put a septic, Title V compliant septic system on the opposite side of the stream. We did an alternatives analysis looking at not only alternate locations, but alternate low impact methodologies that may be an alternative to Title V compliant systems, including a tight tank. Our alternatives analysis concluded that there's no place that leaches on, without crossing the pond, that none of the low impact design methodologies were viable. Basically, Board of Health and Jim Gareffi said that if there's a Title V compliant system available, they will not entertain alternative low impact designs such as a tight tank. In our evaluation of locations available, there really is none. We've concluded that this is the only practical location for this. There's no area that perks on the opposite side of the stream. We found a seam that perks over here. We were asked to evaluate whether or not we could go further away to the south to vacate the 50-foot no disturb zone. And there isn't the ability. Again, there's these contours here that it goes up a steep gradient slope up to Fort Pond Road, that it's all bedrock. This wouldn't be, you can't excavate in here. We don't think that anything would perk below that bedrock, and they'd probably have to blast it to get through it. If they were theoretically able to get across that and get over Fort Pond, there's another wetland complex on the immediate abutting side of Fort Pond, and there's it would require additional BVW crossing to get anyone up there. We've concluded that this is not viable. This is the only option available. So,
can I interrupt you right there?
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
Sorry, David. I'm a little bit new to this project, and I'm going to probably make you repeat yourself.
Oh, no worries.
So, what you're getting from the Board of Health is that they wouldn't allow a Title V because, in a physical sense,
Yep.
a septic system could be installed, right?
Right. Or you said a Title V system, but
Yeah,
there are all.
Jace, you said Title V. I think you meant tight tank.
I'm sorry, a tight tank, right? Sorry about that.
Yep.
So in the Board of Health's perspective, the fact that this is essentially completely contrary to our wetland regs is not really a consideration that they've contemplated, right? The fact that a septic system could be installed in a physical sense means that they're not willing to contemplate a tight tank?
Yes, that's correct.
And also,
And
Chase, this is where I think Amy can help with the conversation as well, is that she has spoken with Jim Gareffi and understands his feelings about the tight tank. Amy, I'm not sure if you want to unmute and speak to that.
Yeah, they are extremely, the Board of Health, reluctant to approve tight tanks anyway. They did approve one over on Cricket, those 3 lots that were being merged to the one house, because they're in that situation. There's absolutely no alternative place to do a Title V system. He says, tight tanks, he's dealing with a person right now who has a tight tank and are tired of doing the pumping all the time, and so have poked holes in it, so it'll leak. So they do not like to see tight tanks at all. We didn't get anywhere with the discussion of what happens if, for example, the Conservation Commission denies this Title V.
And so I'm interested in actually circumventing this entire discussion by suggesting that we should have a joint meeting with the Board of Health to simply discuss this, because I don't mean to be a pain in the butt here, but we're talking past each other. We've got a requirement we're not really willing to bend on. They've got a requirement they're not really willing to bend on. And the idea that we're going through, frankly, the applicant is an intermediary is a little bit frustrating to me. I'll put that in my pocket and let Dave continue with his presentation, but that's where I'm leaning off the bat here.
The difference is, Chase, is that we actually have regulations that we're trying to abide by, and the health department or Jim Gareffi is just making a decision based on.
No, that is DEP. That is DEP.
The tight tank?
Yeah. That if there is a possibility of a Title V, they will not allow a tight tank.
This is Anna. I thought that we have precedent, though, around the Long Lake area, which also is very tight properties. Don't we have precedent of allowing for public health type of situation, transgression into the 50 and a waiver for this very purpose? I mean,
and what do our regs mean if we start to interpret for the public good so broadly as to mean that anything within the 50 is viable at that point? Why did we even bother to?
But this is not anything. We're in situations where this is the only option, which is what he's saying, that they've done an alternative analysis and this is the only option. That's when we might allow it under a waiver, especially if it's replacing a worse situation, like you're having closer to the lake, you're having this type of septic discharge that is not as treated as this location.
But fundamentally, that I can see the argument to a public good here, but fundamentally, this is to the applicant's good.
Okay, so if I may, let's let David carry on with his presentation. And I think as a reminder, remember that the septic system itself is not within the buffer, to my knowledge. David, please correct that.
That's correct.
That the wall and some of the grading and the pipe are, but the septic system is not. So I think it's good for you to carry on with your presentation.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay. So, and again, Chase, just to bring you up to speed and refresh the commission's, this has been a while. The waiver that we're requesting is for putting in the retaining wall. The leach field itself, the septic system, needs to be greater than 50 feet away from wetland resource areas. And as it is, we've carried the septic system. That's a Title V requirement, that septic systems need to be greater than 50 feet away from wetland resource areas. And the Wetlands Protection Act actually states that any Title V compliant system is compliant with the Wetlands Protection Act. The waiver we're requesting is that the forced main, this has to be forced up gradient, needs to bisect the stream. This would be a temporary stream crossing to put the effluent line in, to backfill it and recontour it back to the channel as it was, and then send it up to the septic system. So the septic system is located greater than 50 feet away. That yellow line is, sorry, as I drag around over here. So the leach field itself has to be, they are hard pressed in here where they have, I don't know if you can see the topographic grayscale contours underneath here. Is that, bear with me here. All right. These contour lines here, these are 1 foot elevations too. These aren't 2 foot elevations. This is a very steep gradient slope that goes up towards where Shagbark Drive is up here. This is all bedrock. There's the only place that PERC tested with test pits was in this seam right here. So the waiver request, and again, in our efforts to avoid, minimize, and mitigate, in efforts to avoid, we did the alternatives analysis, and we concluded that there is no practical alternative location for this. In efforts to minimize, initially, this is our construction access right here. Initially, our construction access was across here, which would have had a greater impact on the stream crossing. This is a property line right here. We actually talked to the next door neighbor. This is an existing area that when they did the soil testing, this is the access that they use. So this is already, a cleared pathway getting in. So we've minimized our disturbance here. Initially, this system was mounted we were requesting waiver for clearing of trees and mounting the system to this area, down to the stream. What we did was we proposed to install a retaining wall to alleviate the necessity for any grading down in here, which saves a lot of trees and minimizes our footprint to the greatest extent practical that we can. And then in efforts to mitigate for this, we do have native plantings for the area of alteration above and below the retaining wall, and native seed mixes proposed to install over the system. So we are between a rock and a hard place, literally and figuratively here, in the fact that my client has no other alternative available at this time. So that's where we are today. And since the prior hearing, what we've done is we've had Jim Gareffi put this in front of the Board of Health, and the Board of Health and Jim Gareffi approved this. They reviewed this. They did consider the alternatives analysis that we provided them. With me tonight, we have Jacob Lemieux, who's our civil engineer, and he was in attendance during the Board of Health hearings, and he can speak to that if you guys have any questions. But that's where we are today. We now have Board of Health and Jim Gareffi's approval for this, and they've agreed with us that there's no practical alternative as we presented that to them.
Do any of the questions have any, commissioners have any questions for David or Jacob, who has addressed the commission before and has been on site with our site walks?
Can I ask a question with respect to the gradation into the intermittent stream?
Yep.
I understand it perked. I'm looking at this gradation though, trying to convince myself that we're not just going to end up with septic system discharge right into that intermittent stream. Convince me that that's not going to happen, guys.
Again, that's the Title V requirements, which are intended for, environmental protection of effluent entering wastewater, is that if it's setback Title V, it has to be mounted a certain height. And the Wetlands Protection Act says if a Title V compliant system is installed, it is presumed to be compliant with the Wetlands Protection Act, which brings us to municipal, if you guys have any ordinances or bylaws that are more stringent than Title V, and I don't believe you have, it's presumed that this will maintain water quality and not have effluent entering the stream.
I understand. I get your answer. It makes perfect sense. That's how I would answer the question if I was the consultant presenting this, but it wasn't actually the answer to the question. You're leaning into a regulatory answer.
Yep.
We're looking at a 10% grade, plus or minus, if my sort of takeoffs are correct here, into that intermittent stream. I don't see it. I guess what I'm coming to is, what happens when there is a meaningful, let me ask it a different way then. What happens when there is sewage discharge into the intermittent stream? What happens then?
I would have Jacob Lemieux chime in as stormwater or wastewater engineer, as that's beyond my scope of being a wetland scientist. But in accordance to regulations, which I will stand by, that is the regulation. There's no greater standard than that.
So I will entertain, Jacob has had his hand up and I know to address, and he has spoken with us before. So Jacob, if you would like to address the commission, feel free. You're on mute though, Jacob.
Do you have speakers versus members of the public on as different settings, or so he can?
Amy, Jacob should be under engineers.
Everybody's got the same level. He should just be able to unmute himself and talk. Well, I think I saw him in here twice.
Yep.
Jacob, you are muted though.
Jacob, can you speak? If your audio isn't working, you can mute your computer and dial in.
Okay. Let's, while he's doing that, let's ask if any other commissioners have other questions of David or conversations. Carl or Kyle? Andrew?
Jacob's coming back in.
Okay.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Jacob, hey, there he is.
Jacob.
Yeah, sorry, when I was pressing to unmute before, it said the host has made it so that you can't unmute yourself. So I just I logged out and logged back in really quickly. But for the record, my name is Jacob Lemieux with Hancock Associates. And just to speak to the groundwater breakout is actually what you're called is being referred to. And the breakout elevation per Title V, where you might actually have leach water break out of the side slope of a mound, is 2 inches above the top of the stone in the system. So the requirement is that for 15 feet around the edges of the system, your minimum grade is that breakout elevation to prevent that from happening. Beyond that, it's assumed and that it's been dissipated to groundwater levels, and you wouldn't have sewage discharging into the intermittent stream in any situation. I mean, the groundwater will obviously join with the intermittent stream, but the whole point of the requirement of Title V to have 4 foot of naturally occurring pervious material beneath the system is to provide the required treatment to the effluent, and by the time it gets to the groundwater, then it's considered to be adequately treated per Mass DEP.
But wasn't the phrasing that Mr. Cowell used that we search around and we only, I think the phrasing was we happen to catch a seam right here where we could infiltrate.
Yeah.
You're really towing the line of what the regulatory definition of infiltration means. If your definition of infiltration is we happen to dig one test pit in one location where we happen to get infiltration because we're right over a seam.
Well, Title V requires a minimum of 2 test pits for a primary and 2 deep test pits for a reserve. So we actually have 4 test pits along this scene, all of which are located directly underneath the leaching system.
So with respect to the reserve, talk to me about the reserve locations, if you will.
The reserve locations are those dashed lines to the, I guess that would be the northwest there. Yep. Those. Sorry.
Just asking if I'm on it. That's the reserve.
Oh yeah. That's it. Those are just you're required per Title V for a new system to have an area where a reserve or a repair system could be installed if there was ever an issue in the future where this were to fail or for any reason become non-compliant with Title V and fail a Title V inspection.
Anyone else have any other questions? So David, I'm assuming that your client would like to close this hearing and no longer submit any other information?
That is, yeah, at this point, I believe we've given everything that we're able to provide in supporting evidence that this is what we have available to us and that there's no practical alternative to it.
So prior to closing, I would like to offer, if there are people, I see that Mr. Bergeron has his hand up. So if you would, Mr. Bergeron, like to state your name and your location and briefly ask any questions, that would be appreciated. Amy, is he able to unmute?
He's not shown as muted.
Okay.
I'm not sure what's happening here.
He may have the same tech issue as Jacob. Maybe if he
I
logs out.
recommend you log out and then log back in really quickly.
Although we were just able to hear you. So.
I think somebody else has a raised, Mr. McDonald has a raised hand.
Yes, hi, can you folks hear me?
John, so Mr. McDonald will wait till John comes in. We'll take your question in a moment.
Sure, that'll be fine. Just wanted to make sure you folks could hear me.
Right, so in the interest of keeping this meeting going, Mr. McDonald, if you would like to address the commission, please do so.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Ken McDonald, 42 Shagbark Drive. I'm one of the abutters to this property. I just want to start by saying a lot of time has passed since the last set of hearings. This is the 6th time this project has been before this commission asking for approval. And I just want to ensure that the commission, and I know some folks are new here, haven't lost light of sight of all the concerns that have been raised and the fact that, you know, this hasn't been approved up until now. One of the comments that Hancock had made, David Kyle said that this is the only viable location. But I think it's important to point out, if you look on the plan, this is a 6-acre lot, actually 6.39 is what it says on the plan. The site here is about 1.5 acres of that. And I know at the Board of Health hearing, which I also attended, I asked Jacob Lemieux from Hancock, who's also on this call, on the other side of Shagbark Drive, which you can see at the very bottom of this plan, if you were to scroll down, is about another 4 acres. There is a vernal pool that takes up about 1 acre, but then there's another 3 acres of property. And as I said, I'm one of the abutters, so I know that area well. I can see it from my property because the lots are thin and narrow. And there's big level spots on that side of the Shagbark Drive that look viable. And so, as I mentioned at the Board of Health meeting, I asked Jake if anyone from Hancock had actually walked on the other side of Shagbark Drive, and he said no, they hadn't. So to have Hancock Engineering state that they've done a thorough alternatives analysis, I just don't think is a fair comment because they just haven't walked the entire lot. And I'll just also state related to this that there's 15 homes in this development, 11 of them that have full-time homes. Some of them have cottages down just like the Tropianos do here. None of the 11 full-time homes are on the pond. They are all built on the other side, closer to, away from the pond because they're, 6, 7 acres, some lots are 10. And the way the builder had originally intended is to have the full-time homes off of the pond because as this engineering team has discovered, there's just so much ledge on this pond that it just is problematic. It's really hard to find a location. So they were lucky to find a seam in all the ledge. I'll close by asking a question. During the last hearing back in June, so it's been 4 months, the commission made a direct request of the applicant to hire a hydrologist. And this was the point that Chase had raised here this evening around, well, where's this effluent going to drain? And the request was of the applicant by the commission to have a peer review, a wastewater peer review done to actually tell us how this system's going to drain given all the ledge in the area. So I just want to ask, has that been completed? So I know that was a direct request by the commission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McDonald. David or Jacob, would you like to address? I know these are questions that have been asked in previous hearings. Would you like to address any of Mr. McDonald's comments?
So
I would, yes. Oh, sorry, Jacob.
Can you just stop sharing your screen so that I can put a plan up? It won't let me do it while you.
Yeah. Bear with me. How do I enlarge my screen again? Oh, there we go. All right. Okay. So I need to, oh, yeah, I should be out.
Let me just figure myself out here. Forgive me, just give me 1 second. So, you know, I know this is a little simplistic of a sketch, but I think it gets the point across. You know, Ken had mentioned that there were some flat areas over here, perhaps. However, between our location where we're proposing to put the system and, you know, the actual area back here that could potentially have anything, which we have no knowledge of, you'd have to go through an additional approximately 500 feet of just straight through wetlands and with at least one additional stream crossing on the other side, which I can switch my screen here. So this is just a shot of our drawing, and what we have flagged here is you've got the stream that we're dealing with right now goes through a 12-inch culvert right here and continues right down the other side and across into this larger flat area where that larger wetlands complex is. So there's no path to the other side of this without going through it, which would not only be much more impactful, but the restoration and the work within the wetlands area would be coming on expenses of building a new house. It's uneconomical and it's a little unrealistic. There's just no other spot on this property that is suitable for a septic system. And I think, I don't think there's any more reason to rehash this. I think that's all there is to say about it.
Can we, I'm sorry, can I ask a question about that real quick? So the statement was could you please go back to the previous figure there? There's no other location on this site that's suitable for a septic system.
That's suitable for a septic system and also accessible to how we would have to get the effluent to the septic system. So
okay.
I don't consider an isolated area to be suitable for a septic system that you can't get the effluent to.
What you just characterized, though, is a fundamental difference between the short-term impacts.
What I'm saying is that you're not going to be able, it's not a suitable location if you can't get the effluent to it. So there's no way to get the effluent to that area of the lot without creating more impact and more stream crossings here. And then once we get to the other area of the lot, all the effluent from that is going to go into the same wetlands complex and come down the same river. There's no reason to hire a hydrologist. All of the water coming out of this system, we know where it's going. It's going to the lake and it's going to that.
It's going right into the intermittent stream. We know exactly where it's going.
It's not going right into the intermittent stream. It's percolating down through 4 feet of naturally pervious material and entering the groundwater, which enters the stream, which is exactly what Title V is meant to do.
Right.
But to be clear here, you haven't explored this alternative and you haven't proposed this as an alternative.
We have explored this alternative and we have not proposed it because it's not even worth, it's a non-starter. There's no reason to propose this.
And I do believe so. As someone that was out on some of the original walks, we talked about that. and felt as though it was going to be potentially more impactful to have to go through another wetlands resource area. So
Yeah, it's not a practical alternative. Whether or not it perks on the other side, it's not practical. There's no way to do that without far greater direct wetland impact than what we have proposed.
The commission asking for our client to do that would basically just be the commission asking our client to build a new house somewhere else, or because the cost of doing that would just be prohibitive.
well, I think our discussion was also in terms of the impact of the other wetlands as well. Let's go ahead. We're going to move on now that John is back. John, I see that you have your hands up and you're back with us. Please go ahead.
Yeah,
Please.
so first of all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. If you can state your full name and your address, please.
Okay, it's John Bergeron, 227 Newtown Road. I'm on the pond, avid fisherman, and I apologize because I did have to re-log back in, and so if I ask a question that you've already answered, then my apologies in advance. The first comment I wanted to make was I did appreciate the conversation about the Board of the Health and the Conservation Commission kind of talking past each other versus, what's the difference between being a, Title V compliant versus what's going to impact the pond. And I think a joint meeting would be worthy. The other thing I wanted to bring up was it wasn't clear to me that at one point, I think it was the July meeting, there was a discussion about a hydrologist and actually looking at where would the effluent go, because gravity is not our friend in this situation, right? And my biggest concern is any kind of effluent going into the stream and then ending up into the pond. That was the first thing, and then the second thing I'm really just struggling with is we put in the 50-foot do not disturb zone for a reason, right? Obviously some things leaching into the leach field, and I'm wondering if we're going to make waivers possible for that. Is it what's the future here in terms of actually following up on this? I think we also run the risk of setting a tremendous precedent. So those are the primary comments that I wanted to make. I'd appreciate just hearing the response.
You're muted there, Sarah.
Sorry about that. I was talking to myself. The only one I can address is the last one, which is really the waiver in the public interest, where it's consistent really with the intent and the purpose of protecting the wetlands bylaw. And we do defer to the Board of Health at times in terms of it meets Title V as well. But I will ask the Jacob and David if you would like to address John's questions.
Sure. So I'll just address just clarify one thing. The town, your bylaw allows septic systems outside of the 50-foot buffer. So you're not making any kind of precedent by allowing any leaching outside of the 50-foot buffer. We're not asking for a waiver for that. So if there's a groundwater concern, it's separate from the Title V approval. The Title V treats the water, and a hydrologist is not going to, all a hydrologist is going to do here is tell us where the water goes, and we know where that water goes, and we know the amount of treatment it's going to get because it was designed based on the Title V DEP standards, which is specifically what the state mandates is needed for treatment for septic systems, for this groundwater to be clean enough to enter into the groundwater and go wherever it goes.
Well, if I could, I would just offer to the commission that, two things, that I think the difference here that we're talking about is, intent versus compliance, right? So I can design something that's compliant all the time, but, do I run the risk of actually having, unintended consequences? And the other thing I think is that it's important to point out is that in section 1.4 of the, the waivers regulation forms, the intent is that it's got to be in the public interest to avoid prevention of, a safety or hazard or water dependent and consistent with the intent of the purpose of the bylaw and the least environmentally damaging to the practicable alternative. It doesn't say or, and I guess, I'm just uncomfortable that we've explored all the opportunities here. I think that some of the alternatives should be presented versus saying we took a look at it and there's not another alternative. But let's look at the analysis. I don't think there's any harm in that.
Okay, thank you. We have another member that has their hand up. Kristen Kazokis, if you would like to introduce yourself and ask any questions.
Hi, I'm Kristen Kazokis. I am a direct abutter. I own the property of 6 Cottage Way. And I just wanted to say thank you to the Tropianos and to Hancock Associates for the amount of work that they have put into coming up with this system. I support this system. I believe that the Conservation Commission can condition the work to protect the wetlands. I also trust in the Board of Health and the Title V regulations that is in place in order to protect our water resources. And I believe that a waiver is justified because putting in a Title V approved system is actually protecting our wetland resources, our waterways, the pond, than what is in existence. And I believe the Tropianos are making an effort to protect their land and Fort Pond for long term, because by putting in this system, then what they're doing is ensuring that if they sell the property or if it goes into other owners in another way through the family, that it's being maintained and that nobody is going to be doing something under the radar. This is a system that they've put out. It's been analyzed. We've all had a say in it. And I just the other component is I know their property well in terms of walking it, my property, and with the topography, the ledge, the wetlands. This is the right place for this system. So I just encourage the commission to approve this project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to close questioning and come back to our commission and ask if any commissioners have any other questions or comments and how they would like to move forward.
This is Carl. So I guess my only comment is that all sites don't lend themselves to traditional septic systems. I think this is one of those sites where squeezing this septic system in. It's I guess, I mean, it's a, like Chase was saying, it's a difficult, it's kind of a difficult pill to swallow. There are alternatives to traditional septic systems that are on the market, and I'm Are you suggesting a tight tank though, Carl? Because the Board of Health is not supporting that. No, not a tight tank, but like a Clevis Multrum type of system, composting.
Yeah, I believe that Amy asked them about that as well, and I don't want to speak out of term, but I did not think that was in favor.
Yeah, and David, Jacob, you might have more information on this. I believe that those systems actually require a septic system to go with them. Was that right?
Well, you still have to have a gray water system to handle the flows from the the non-sanitary flows.
Yeah. If not, they have to have it pumped out.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that there are options. I know they're not as nice as a standard septic system, but there are other options. I guess that's my 2 cents.
Just hi, Carl. This is Dave. Just again, this goes back to the sentiment that we consider these. We would entertain them if they were considered viable, but it stems back to Mass DEP and Board of Health rendering that if a Title V compliant system is available, that none of those would be considered. We cannot get those permitted. I feel your sentiment. I echo your sentiment that if it was available, we would consider them, but they aren't. That's our hands are tied.
And
Unless we untie them for you and deny this application. In which case, you would have the opportunity to consider alternatives.
or you can,
I again, right. I don't, without, if you want to have a joint meeting with Board of Health or bring Jim Gareffi to the table, denial of this may leave us with the same, with not that being viable. They're going to say there's a Title V. I don't want to, we're stuck between two different municipal entities that are, you're right, Chase, we're not at the table together. And unless we understood whether or not the Board of Health would entertain a system with denial of this, and I don't think that they will, it leaves us back to effluent going into a unlined cesspool hole in the ground directly into the water table and the gray water system 20 feet away from the edge of the lake. So it's
I'm
without
going
any
to push.
information.
I'm going to push back against that idea, David. I again, you're doing an excellent job as a consultant representing your client, but that's not the alternative that we're considering, right?
Chase, I understand your line of questioning here, but you're not, by denial of this, you do not give us a direct, it doesn't force the Board of Health's hand necessarily into putting us into a tight tank by saying Title V is not available.
right, so let's look at options here that are presented. I would even feel comfortable. I don't know how, in the essence of time, where this has gone on quite a while, to kind of keep this moving forward or moving backwards, to have a joint discussion. I'm also would encourage Chase that I feel comfortable if you would like to speak with Jim Gareffi and bring those comments back. We can continue this one more hearing, and you can be the liaison to do that, or to speak with the chair, or see if we can try it. I don't even know what nights Board of Health meets. What night do they meet now?
Jacob, do you know
I'm actually trying to look it up. When their next
I'm
meeting
not sure
is.
off the top of my head.
Second and fourth Wednesdays of each month.
Right.
Additional meetings if necessary.
It seems that the liaison role with Jim Gareffi has already, in a way, been filled by Amy fielding these questions between.
I agree, Jacob, and after I said that, I realized that. So
it's already been done.
Yeah. So I guess what I would do is we do not meet until the 14th to ask Amy if she could reach out, if they could give us 10 or 15 minutes of their time for discussion on that day.
Yeah, they should meet early December. Well, I'm not sure if we can get on that agenda. I will see when they can get us
Can
on.
we ask them to be on our agenda? I'm not the protocol if they have to have quorum, or if that has to be posted on theirs as well.
It would have to
They
be
should have
posted
a quorum.
either way.
Yep.
By both commissions. Or if the way it works, would it be acceptable to you if Jim comes to one of your meetings? Or do you want the Board of Health, or at least one of the commissioners?
Chase, what is your thought with that? With just Jim, or are we looking?
My 2 cents is that I'd prefer to have a formal meeting of the board, because we're speaking past each other. It's a matter of a rock and a hard place here.
Okay.
And
so let's come up with some options here. Amy, if you could see whoever's meeting first, if we can get on their agenda, or if they are willing to come on our agenda and bring a lot.
It looks like their meetings are December 1 and 15. And I just have to see if we can get on the agenda.
Right.
That doesn't make sense. I have the second and fourth Wednesday. That's the
But
first.
if they're the 15th, we meet on the 14th.
Well, their calendar is not matching up with what they say. So
So
I will check.
So how does the committee feel, the commission members, if we ask if that is viable for us to be on, whoever meets first? If we could be on the Board of Health to have this discussion, an open discussion, or if they're willing to come on to our meeting on the 14th, and we will continue this hearing, David, with your permission, to December 14th.
Yes, I think that that's the best course of action. So I would leave it up to you guys to coordinate that. Just keep us posted. If there is a meeting by a hearing, we'd want to be in attendance as well.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right, we appreciate your time. We still have other hearings, so we are going to bid you adieu. Wish you happy Thanksgiving.
All right, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
You will.
Now for the 8:45 continued public hearing, notice of intent, 628 Newtown Road, Mass DEP 204946, replace gravel driveway with permeable pavers. Who would like
And
to?
I will say that John Field asked for continuance after I posted the agenda, so it is still on the agenda. But I noticed Kartik is here, so I don't know if he wanted to say something or.
Yeah, the last time, thank you for waiting for me. I wasn't even sure if, I tried to reach out to John, but he didn't reply. Anyway, at the last meeting, I believe Chase raised the issue about replacing the gravel, and he wanted me, I think, to find some evidence that showed that permeable pavers actually are an improvement over, or they won't let the water run off into the stream around the house. So I found something, and he's, and was that you, Chase? Was that you? Or is that Chase or Mr. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Gerbig?
You actually got it right. Yeah, good work.
Okay, so you prefer Chase or Mr. Gerbig?
Chase is fine.
All right, thanks. So Chase, the one thing I found out, and you were pretty keen, and you specifically said that you didn't want anecdotal evidence from contractors. All right, so I'm not a civil engineer. I am an engineer by training, but I'd found something that I can send to Amy. This is from the municipal, what is that? Burlington, Vermont. They have an advisory on minimizing driveway runoff, and they actually say that gravel driveways essentially need replacing every couple of years because when there is heavy rains, the gravel gets eroded. That might not be the case with our house, because ours is more a question of the snow falling on it and the flow just taking it out and depositing it into the surroundings, and that's why our driveway is sinking. So we have been here 4 years, and we have seen a lot of our driveway is gone now. So what?
Allow me to interject here, Kartik. If you have something you want us to take a look at, I think the most efficient way is to transmit it to Amy. She'll transmit it to the entirety of the Conservation Commission.
Let me see if I can share my. Let me see if I can share my screen. Yeah, I think this is the one. Can you see this? So, can you see this? I'm trying to.
Yes, but Kartik, I'm going to stop you right here. I have essentially zero patience for taking a paragraph out of context.
No. So,
I will send this to Amy. To convince me that this is the right way to go, I'm not going to side with you based on looking at one paragraph.
No, it's not one paragraph. It's just part of a document. It's like from Burlington.
That's fine. Kartik, you're willing to submit that. The commission is happy to review. Just go ahead and talk us through this.
So what it says is that while gravel is good for water to seep through as it gets compacted, it loses its permeability. So it essentially approaches the consistency of asphalt. So the runoff is about the same, and the gravel particles can get washed away into the street or any nearby water body or anything. So every 2 years, the gravel will need to be replaced because of snow or rain or whatever. So they actually mentioned the runoff going into Lake Champlain because this is Burlington, Vermont. And so this is what they say about permeable pavers. And again, I don't want to show you just a screen. It says that it can prevent this runoff significantly because it just lets the water to seep through, and it's got a lifespan of 20 to 40 years. So we don't have this issue of replacing the gravel every couple of years and keep losing it to the rain and to the snow. So that's essentially what this document says.
If you wish to share that, just send that to Amy, and you can always, prior to the next meeting, if you want to reach out to Burlington, Vermont, and ask them how the pavers worked for them as well.
Well, this is from the city of Burlington, Vermont. I don't know who to contact over there. They just put up a document online that I found in my search by Googling for it.
Right. So someone authored and someone penned it. So
and certainly take a look at this. My rebuttal would be that finding one alternative line of evidence doesn't, in my mind, trump the U.S. Department of Agriculture's determination of curve numbers and runoffs with respect to gravel driveways.
Like I said, I'm not
impervious areas, and that is why I'm asking for your civil engineering representative to demonstrate scientific basis for why this is a better approach.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he was going to be here, and in fact, I was going to pull out of this meeting myself because, like you said, he probably has he's got the numbers to back this up, and I just found this isolated piece to talk to you about. Okay,
right.
Like
So Karthik, and we appreciate you staying on and hanging on. We know it's late at night, but we will carry this on to the next meeting. And so if you can reach out with, if it is John Field that's securing that data for you, and just remind him that we would be interested in hearing that. So Amy, that will be on for the next hearing?
On the 14th, yes.
Correct.
Is that December 14th, you said?
That is correct.
All right. Well then.
And Amy will let you know what time. Thank you very much for joining us.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's 9:58. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to
So,
share?
just three quick things. Mark Slager has already just submitted the revised plan for 6A Grimes. Patel is going to be submitting the notice of intent tomorrow for the other enforcement order. And I will see about getting on the December 1st Board of Health. I'm not sure if this is Amber and Judy listening in. I don't know if Board of Health is meeting live or hybrid or virtual, but can people make December 1st? Is that like next Wednesday?
If it's Wednesday, I've got that Nagog Orchard Ag Committee that starts at 6, but usually it's done. I'm not sure what time Board of Health starts.
Judy says she thinks it's virtual.
Okay. So, I mean, I think after this, I think we'll try. So let's
Yeah, Wednesday the 1st isn't a total disaster for me if it's later. I probably couldn't do earlier, but if we're on the back end of their agenda, I could definitely make it work.
I'm kind of guessing at this point they might, if they are agreeable, would stick us at the end of their agenda. But I have no idea what their agenda looks like.
Unfortunately, I have to travel that day, so I won't be in town, but could make it work.
Do we, as a point of order on that, do we have to have quorum? It's only a discussion.
Let me think. No, you do not have to have quorum, but I will post it as if, just in case.
I think it'd be important to make sure we do this around Chase's schedule.
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm being a particular pain in the butt here. And I should be really clear about a couple.
I don't think that. I think if we're going to try and ask to meet with us, we just try and go forward and ask. So
I understand and appreciate that, Sarah. But I do think it's important to clarify that I don't think I can legally vote on this application. And if we're doing this in order to make me comfortable, then it's probably not worth doing.
It's
right.
not.
And for a point of order for the newer commissions, Chase cannot vote on that because he hasn't been to enough of the meetings and on the site, correct?
You can only miss one meeting.
I think Chase has raised some valid points, and I'm feeling a little uneasy with it myself. I think it's well worth having the discussion.
Okay.
I completely agree.
So let's just see if we can make it, and if we can get at least 2 or something, I think that would be great. But I agree, Amy, that we do have to post it as though everyone will magically appear.
Just in case.
Just in case. Okay. Can I have?
I appreciate you all being deferential to my ignorance. And
You should hear
Breakout
them behind
defense
your
here.
back, Chase.
Okay, so let's go ahead, and do I have a motion?
Sarah, real quick, on a brighter note to end the meeting, I just want to say thank you to Amy. She finished decorating the tree this weekend, so the tree looks great for the town hunt.
Thank you.
And the bear hasn't gotten to it yet, so I was.
Oh, nice. You went back out to check on it? Awesome. Nice. Looks good.
And the
Did a
Girl
lot of great
Scouts,
facts.
Troop 19 did a great job of kind of re-clearing the Williams Loop trails, even like kind of blowing, raking off the trails so you can actually see the trails because they're not
Right.
under leaves.
Yeah,
So
looked
that
good.
was really nice.
It looked very good. Having said that, I'll make a motion to adjourn the Conservation Commission on November 23rd at 10 o'clock.
A second. There you go, Andrew.
All right, roll call vote. Chase,
Aye.
Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye.
Carl,
I'm Melber Guy.
Kyle,
I'm Maxwell. Aye.
myself, I. It's unanimous.
Good night.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Take
I'll
care.
let you know.